As the White House releases its AI legislative framework, we are discussing the coming battle around AI rules. Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. One of the things that was absolutely inevitable about 2026 is that the conversation around AI regulations, AI policy, AI's rules of the road, in the US at least, was going to get much louder. Part of that has to do with the fact that AI is just playing an increasingly large role in people's lives, meaning that there's more attention focused on it. And that cuts across everything from the experience people are having at their jobs to local politics, especially as this infrastructure build-out happens. But this was also inevitable simply due to the schedule of American politics with the midterm elections coming up this year. The question, of course, has been, given all of the other policy debates that we have in this country, where was AI going to rank? What's clear is that even if there are many other issues that still rank far ahead of AI, it's growing in significance very, very quickly. Blue Rose Research's head of data science, David Shore, recently jumped on the Odd Lots podcast to talk about the politics of AI, and one of the things that he noted in a companion Twitter thread was that AI as an issue is rising in importance faster than any other issue they track. Right now, it's ranked 29th out of 39 issues. At the very top of the list, as you might imagine, are things like the cost of living, the economy, political corruption, inflation, healthcare, taxes and government spending, democratic institutions, political division, foreign policy, budget deficits, poverty, immigration, crime, Medicare, Social Security, etc. The things that impact everyone in their day-to-day lives. And yet, in terms of its rise in importance, it is absolutely right at the top, ahead of war in the Middle East, voting rights, political corruption, privacy, unemployment, mental health, Medicare, political division, and more. Already, in their research at least, AI is ranked above issues including the environment, climate change, abortion, and guns. And of course, this issue is not rising in a vacuum. The context in which AI has to operate is going to shape what people think of it. Shore writes, AI is hitting at a time when 61% of Americans say life has gotten less affordable in the last year, only 25% feel confident in their financial future, and only 34% said they have a secure job. Understating things fairly dramatically, Shore writes, not a great starting place for major disruption to the labor market. This shows up in people being more concerned than excited about AI. More than 50% are concerned about losing their job in the next year, and an even higher percentage is concerned about losing their job because of AI. Over 50% of people are concerned that either they or someone in their family will lose their job in the next year, with 56% being concerned for that specifically because of AI. The numbers just go up from there. 72% are concerned that AI will change the job market in a way that drives down wages for people like them. 77% are concerned about entire industries being eliminated by AI. And 79% are concerned for young people entering the workforce and finding fewer job opportunities because of AI. When it comes to political messaging, Blue Rose Research finds that people are very suspicious of anyone who say everything is okay. Basically, there is very high conviction, whatever it is rooted in, that AI is more likely to cause job losses than economic productivity that benefits people. And when asked what the government's most important priority in managing the growth of AI should be, when funding the creation of new jobs and basic benefits like healthcare, even if that means limiting the amount that American tech companies can profit from AI, beats the ever-living snot out of keep innovating so that America outcompetes the rest of the world in developing AI. Now, the way that this question was phrased is extremely likely to get this sort of response, but it's important to note that this is not just a left-right thing. Even among Trump voters, funding the creation of new jobs and basic benefits beat keep innovating 2-1. Voters also aren't particularly keen on policies like UBI as the answer. When asked whether the government should prioritize creating good-paying jobs or providing direct income support, again, every demographic, by a factor of about 3-1, had create good-paying jobs over providing income support. So that's kind of the context that we're coming into. AI is growing as an issue of concern. People are bringing their broader economic anxiety to that conversation, and they seem to care a lot about there continuing to be good-paying jobs. Now, if you needed evidence that the conversation around AI policy was heating up, we've been seeing things on both the state and the national level. On the national level, Republican Marsha Blackburn rolled out a 291 behemoth in advance of the recent White House proposals, seemingly in a way to position herself at the head of that conversation. While Blackburn claimed that it was in line with the White House's goals, the response of many was summed up by RSI's Adam Tierer, who wrote, Senator Blackburn's massive new AI regulation bill, 291 pages of near-endless mandates, would make European technocrats blush with envy if it ever passed. The layers of red tape contained in this proposal would create a compliance cost hell for small innovators, and the liability provisions would spawn an endless litigation hell that would be a trial lawyer's dream once they started filing frivolous lawsuits based on the completely open-ended theories of harm throughout the bill. But of course, not only is it not just federal policy that the White House is paying attention to, a lot of their focus has been on preempting state-level regulation. There has increasingly been more consideration and engagement from the AI companies around state-level legislation, particularly out of New York and California. Recently, representatives from companies like OpenAI basically said that if federal policy can't get its act together, they should start engaging more deeply with these state-level bills. Meanwhile, political races in these state-level environments have become a flashpoint for the politics of AI. The Wall Street Journal recently covered the congressional campaign of Alex Bores, who, based on his sponsorship of bills focused on AI regulations, has become a target for super PACs who are against strict AI rules. So that's a bit about the environment that the White House's new national AI legislative framework comes into. Announcing the policy on Friday, the White House actually acknowledged the mixed feelings, to put it mildly, people have about this technology. In the announcement article, they write, "The administration recognizes that some Americans feel uncertain about how this transformative technology will affect issues they care about, like their children's well-being or their monthly electricity bill. For the White House, this is a clear signal of the need for, as they put it, strong federal leadership to, quote, ensure the public's trust in how AI is developed and used in their daily lives." The 6 points of the legislative framework outlined by the White House include 1. Protecting children and empowering parents, 2. Safeguarding and strengthening American communities, which is the section that deals with data center politics and the cost of electricity, 3. Respecting intellectual property rights and supporting creators, 4. Preventing censorship and protecting free speech, 5. Enabling innovation and ensuring American AI dominance, and 6. Educating Americans and developing an AI-ready workforce. Now, let's look into the larger policy document and see what they actually include here. The first thing you'll note is that this is not some comprehensive document. This is basically the polar opposite of Marsha Blackburn's 291-page tome, although interestingly, their goals are not dissimilar, in that both are trying to plant a stake in the conversation. In terms of what's notable within the different categories, there's nothing particularly surprising about the protecting children and empowering parents section. This is, as we'll discuss in a minute, one of the major concerns, particularly of some of the groups on the right who are most antagonistic with the White House about AI policy. Section number 2, safeguarding and strengthening American communities. These are themes that the White House has been building on recently, specifically with their ratepayer protection pledge. The protection pledge was the Trump administration's approach to getting AI companies commit to footing the full bill for the AI infrastructure build-out, ensuring, for example, that people in communities with new AI data centers do not pay increased electricity costs. This, I think, at this point is one of the least controversial parts of all of this, as witnessed by the fact that pretty much every AI company stepped up to agree. The rest of it is kind of a grab bag of other policies. Also on the subject of AI infrastructure, this directs Congress to streamline federal permitting for AI infrastructure construction and operation, specifically giving developers the ability to develop or procure on-site and behind-the-meter power generation. On the community side, it suggests for more law enforcement efforts to combat AI-related scams for vulnerable populations, and also to provide resources for small businesses, including things like grants, tax incentives, and technical assistance programs. One of the most delicate balancing acts comes in Section 3, respecting intellectual property rights and supporting creators. The White House reaffirms its position that training AI models on copyrighted material does not violate copyright laws, but also says that they acknowledge arguments to the contrary and supports allowing the courts to resolve that issue. They write that Congress should consider enabling licensing frameworks or collective rights systems for right holders to collectively negotiate compensation from AI providers without incurring antitrust liability. Any such legislation, however, they write, should not address when and whether such licensing is required. It sounds to me like they're basically trying to create a framework outside of courts for these sort of negotiations to happen that is also outside of the antitrust enforcement framework. And then one area that I again think is relatively uncontroversial is their notion that Congress should consider establishing a federal framework protecting individuals from the unauthorized distribution or commercial use of AI-generated replicas of their voice, likeness, or other identifiable attributes. While, of course, respecting that there are clear exceptions for, quote, parody, satire, news reporting, and other expressive works protected by the First Amendment. Now, the First Amendment and free speech is also the subject of Part 4. This is the shortest section with just 2 bullet points. Congress should prevent the U.S. government from coercing technology providers to ban, compel, or alter content based on particle or ideological agendas. And Congress should provide an effective means for Americans to seek redress from the federal government for agency efforts to censor expression on AI platforms or dictate the information provided by an AI platform. Now, this is an issue that is going to come up. A law working its way through New York would basically limit the ability for chatbots to provide legal or medical advice. While the bill is intended, it seems to give consumers redress for getting bad advice, i.e. the ability to sue. In practice, it would basically mean that LLMs could only provide legal advice to existing lawyers and medical advice to existing doctors, with consumers being blocked from getting access to those questions. given how many of the positive stories of AI are people understanding their medical bills and health diagnoses for the first time, obviously an overly heavy-handed version of this bill could be extremely damaging. Now, going back to the White House framework, section number 5 is enabling innovation and ensuring American AI dominance. One of the more interesting proposals here, Congress should not create any new federal rulemaking body to regulate AI and should instead support development and deployment of sector-specific AI applications through existing regulatory bodies with subject matter expertise and through industry-led standards. Effectively, if this technology is as ubiquitous as it seems and is going to touch everything, rather than trying to create some new mega agency that can reasonably interact with every other regulatory body, just let the existing bodies develop new AI-specific policy capabilities. Section 6 I mentioned in a show over the weekend, educating Americans in developing an AI-ready workforce. Basically what I said about this for those who missed that episode is that although I am very glad to see this included as a key part of the legislative framework, it is very clear that they have absolutely no idea what this actually is going to mean in practice. It's basically a few hand-wavy bullet points, like using non-regulatory methods to ensure existing education programs, including apprenticeships, incorporate AI training. That goes far less far than what I would like to see, which is a mass-scale nationwide upskilling effort. Finally, in this 4-pager, the White House added a 7th point that was not in the main article, at least not as one of the named points, which is the longest and most fully articulated of any of the 7 points, which is about preempting state laws. So what have been the responses? Senator Ted Cruz seems to be stepping up to align himself with the White House, and contra Marsha Blackburn, as the Republicans wrap their hands around this issue. Senator Blackburn said she, quote, welcomed the White House to this important discussion and, quote, looked forward to working with my colleagues to codify the president's agenda, while still saying that her Trump AI Act is the solution America needs. Former chief technologist at the FTC, Neil Chilson, said, so it's Blackburn's Trump AI Act against Trump's actual AI framework. Many other responses were basically looking to see whether the issue they cared about most was included. Former Trump official John Schwepp writes, love the emphasis on age verification and protecting kids online. And former Trump advisor Dean Ball wrote, I was especially heartened by this section, the one on free speech and First Amendment protections, and, quote, heartily concur with the White House that Congress should act to prevent government coercion over the free speech rights of AI developers and users alike. Others noted when their issues weren't there. Cybersecurity dive reporter Eric Geller writes, 1 week after Trump's national cyber director said the administration wants to make cybersecurity a core consideration for AI developers, Trump issues an AI policy framework that doesn't even mention cyber. Unsurprisingly, the framework doesn't have a lot of support from Democrats. Representative Josh Gottheimer wrote, while the framework takes steps in the right direction, unfortunately the White House fails to address key issues, including strong accountability for AI companies. Preemption only makes sense if federal law effectively replaces what states have built with a standard that is truly comprehensive and protects Americans. Simply put, this framework still has a long way to go. Voluntary standards won't do the trick. In addition to common sense guardrails, we need serious solutions that address workforce challenges, better incentives for STEM education, enhanced protections against deepfakes, safe and secure AI models and agents, and guarantees that all Americans reap the massive benefits AI offers. Gottheimer concludes, we are in a Cold War-era style race with China and we must win, both for our economy and our national security. If done the right way, the potential for areas like healthcare, education, and government efficiency are boundless. But we have to win it the right way. He concludes by saying that he's working with his colleagues to develop a framework which presumably is, in his estimation, that right way. CNBC's Emily Wilkins writes, if the White House wants AI bills to pass, they'll need pro-business, pro-AI Dems like Gottheimer on board. Based on this statement, they have a ways to go. To be honest, though, the Gottheimer language leaves a lot more space for collaboration than it might seem at first. Even framing it as the framework still has a long way to go is very different from a rejection out of hand. Indeed, in some ways, the White House's biggest political challenges are coming from their right flank. Steve Bannon's War Room account on Twitter quoted Joe Allen, who said, now you look at who this White House national policy framework is enabling. People like Google, people like xAI, Anthropic, and OpenAI. What is the predominant goal of every single one of these companies? It is a transhuman future, and for some of them, a post-human future. They want to build machines that replace your work. They want to build machines that have access to and are influencing or even controlling your children. They want to build machines that are the equivalent here on Earth to God. It is profoundly anti-human. And even if one views that as the far end of the spectrum of part of the conversation, it is still far from clear exactly where the right is going to land when it comes to alignment around AI issues. Still, some remain cautiously optimistic. Dean Ball, who while a former Trump advisor around AI, has been extremely critical lately of their engagement with Anthropic, writes, the White House's proposal for a nationwide AI law is a thoughtful document that will serve as an excellent foundation for the legislative work ahead. I would be happy to see these principles, if translated well into statute, become law. When someone asked, I don't understand much about policy, but is a 4-page document with lists of quite broad and unspecific recommendations really worth celebrating? Dean responded yes, and clarified, the major and crucial distinction between this document and an executive order or another report like the AI Action Plan is that this document is self-consciously the opening move in a long, multidimensional public negotiation over the legislation. You must read it that way. And so in that spirit, we will close here with the idea that this is the beginning of a much bigger conversation, one that I would love for you all to be involved in. For now, that is going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Appreciate you listening or watching as always, and until next time, peace